Imagine waking up each day knowing your body, your choices, and even your most private thoughts are never really your own. For millions of women in ancient Rome, this wasn't just a possibility, it was life itself. In this video, we're diving into the unbelievable daily realities of Roman female slaves, exploring the kinds of normal that would horrify us today. Welcome to our channel, where we uncover the hidden, often shocking sexual practices and intimate histories that shaped civilizations. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey through humanity's most secretive and unsettling corners. To understand the world of Roman female slaves, we need to strip away the grand marble image of Rome, the gladiators, the senators in togas, the mighty aqueducts, and instead focus on the dim, cramped rooms where lives were bought and sold like property. Women captured in wars or born into servitude often found themselves valued not for their minds or their humanity, but for the ability to serve, to please, and to be exploited. Their day began not with choice but with command, dictated by masters who owned not just their labor but their bodies. It's easy to imagine the cruelty of physical work, but what's even darker is the reality that, for many of these women, the most brutal labor was the surrender of intimacy under coercion, made to feel ordinary in a society where consent meant nothing to the enslaved. Everyday life for a Roman female slave could change drastically depending on her role. Some were relegated to endless domestic chores, cooking, weaving, fetching water, scrubbing floors. Others became attendants in households, tasked with dressing their mistresses, preparing perfumes, arranging hair, or caring for children. But this illusion of closeness with Roman elite women rarely brought protection. Instead, female slaves existed in a strange limbo, intimately present in the private spaces of their masters, yet perpetually invisible as humans. They were simultaneously indispensable and disposable. Their hands touched the silks, jewels, and oils of their mistresses, while their own skin bore the calluses, the bruises, and sometimes the brand marks of ownership. One of the most horrifying aspects was how deeply normalized sexual access to these women was. For a Roman master, owning a female slave meant guaranteed control over her body. Unlike freeborn women, who had at least some legal recourse, enslaved women had none. If her master or any man in the household wanted her, refusal was impossible. The historian Seneca even wrote casually of how wealthy men rotated through their household slaves at will, as if choosing a wine from a cellar. What's more disturbing is that Roman law didn't even recognize this as sexual assault. For the enslaved, there was no legal category of violation, because the law saw them as incapable of consent altogether. In many households, a slave's day might begin with the humiliation of being inspected. Masters wanted to ensure their property was kept in good condition. Appearance mattered, not for the slave's dignity, but for the owner's pride and utility. Some female slaves were forced to maintain strict grooming habits, not because it brought them comfort, but to make them more pleasing to their master's desires. Imagine being ordered to pluck, bathe, and adorn yourself not for your own sense of beauty, but to meet the gaze of someone who saw you as merchandise. It was a constant reminder that even your skin and hair were not yours. They belonged to someone else's vision. While some female slaves were kept inside private homes, others were forced into prostitution, a reality that was disturbingly common. Roman society viewed prostitution not as shameful but as necessary, and the state taxed brothels as legitimate businesses. Owners who wished to profit from their slaves could send them to work in these places, often marked with degrading labels or branded on the skin to show their availability. The women had no choice, no escape, and often worked until their health collapsed. For them, daily life was a cycle of repeated exploitation, punctuated by exhaustion and disease. And because society condoned this, their suffering was dismissed as an economic transaction, normalized into the rhythm of the empire. Yet even outside brothels, the expectations on enslaved women were relentless. In wealthy households, they were often assigned to the bedrooms of their masters, stationed there not only to fetch or serve, but also to be on hand for sexual availability. To us, the idea of being forced to wait on call is chilling, but for Rome, this was simply part of household organization. Wealth and masculinity were measured not just in land or gold, but in the number of bodies one controlled. To possess female slaves in this way wasn't a scandal. It was a statement of power. But not all horrors were physical. Psychological manipulation was deeply woven into the system. Female slaves were constantly reminded of their status, often pitted against each other or used to undermine their own gender solidarity. Mistresses of the house, themselves subject to a patriarchal system, sometimes inflicted cruelty on their slaves, punishing them for imagined flirtations or suspected affairs with husbands. Jealousy could mean beatings, humiliation, or reassignment to the harshest of duties. Enslaved women lived in perpetual fear not just of men, but of other women in the household who held authority over them. Pregnancy added another layer of complexity. For some female slaves, bearing children meant even deeper entrapment, because their offspring were automatically born into slavery. A child could be ripped away and sold, used as an additional investment by the master. For others, pregnancies were forced upon them, either by the will of the master or through the deliberate pairing of slaves to breed more laborers. This practice, disturbingly efficient, reduced human relationships to animal-like production lines. Women's wombs became another tool of economic gain, and their feelings of motherhood were irrelevant to the system that owned them. And yet, in the margins of this oppression, female slaves developed coping mechanisms. Some used subtle forms of resistance, pretending to be sick, sabotaging small tasks, or forming bonds with each other to share comfort. There are even accounts of women who weaponized their sexuality strategically, aligning with one master or patron to secure slightly better treatment. But this agency was fragile, always dependent on the whims of those in power. One wrong move, one suspicion of disloyalty, could lead to brutal punishment, from beatings to branding to being sent to the mines, a near-certain death sentence. The punishments themselves highlight another layer of horror. For female slaves, public humiliation was common. They might be stripped, flogged, or paraded in front of others as an example. The act wasn't only physical pain, it was psychological degradation meant to remind them, and everyone watching, of their status as property. Roman writers sometimes describe these punishments casually, as if they were a natural part of order. This normalization of cruelty made the enslaved body a public spectacle, reinforcing control through fear. Religious and cultural norms added yet another burden. Roman religion emphasized household gods and rituals, and slaves were often required to participate in ceremonies, not for their own beliefs, but as extensions of their masters' devotion. For female slaves, this could mean preparing elaborate rituals, cleaning shrines, or even being used in fertility rites. Participation was compulsory, blurring the line between faith and forced labor. Their spirituality, if they held private beliefs, was often suppressed or ignored, swallowed by the dominant culture of their owners. Despite all of this, the most chilling aspect may be how invisible these women became in history. While Roman historians wrote extensively about battles, politics, and even the lives of elite women, the voices of enslaved females are almost entirely absent. What we know comes from glimpses, legal records, casual comments in letters, archaeological findings. It's a silence that speaks volumes, suggesting how thoroughly their suffering was normalized, how little their pain was considered worth recording. This erasure is itself a form of violence, denying them even the dignity of remembrance. Still, some echoes survive. Graffiti found in Roman towns hints at the lives of prostitutes and slaves, scrawled insults or crude drawings showing how they were mocked even by ordinary people. In burial sites, skeletons sometimes bear the marks of malnutrition or injury, physical proof of the hardships endured. Through these fragments, we piece together a mosaic of horror, one that reminds us that behind the grandeur of Rome lay countless women whose lives were ground down in silence. As we reflect on these realities, it's tempting to dismiss them as relics of a brutal past, far removed from us. But the story of Roman female slaves resonates uncomfortably with the persistence of exploitation in later centuries, serfdom in medieval Europe, transatlantic slavery, and even modern trafficking. The patterns of control, of commodifying women's bodies, of erasing their voices, have repeated across cultures and times. To study Rome is not just to uncover history, it is to confront the roots of systemic abuse that still echo in our world today. And so, as we close this exploration, consider the weight of what was once called normal. For Roman female slaves, the everyday was a landscape of humiliation, coercion, and survival. Their endurance under such circumstances is a testament not only to human resilience, but also to the need to tell their stories, however fragmented they may be. These women may not have left behind grand monuments or celebrated names, but their experiences shaped the fabric of Rome just as surely as emperors and senators did. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden realities of the past. Which of these daily horrors shocked you the most? Was it the way sexual exploitation was legalized, the casual cruelty of punishments, or the chilling silence that history imposed on their voices? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflections. And don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into the hidden history of sex and sexuality, where we continue to shine a light on the stories the past tried to bury. Until next time, remember, history is never as clean as marble statues. It is written in the scars we can still uncover.